So the term preliminary or preparatory can come in different situations. Right now, in this book, Mind Training Like Rays of the Sun, we have the 4 preparatory preliminary practices. Okay, so it's precious, meditating on precious human life, impermanence and death, karma and its effects, and the disadvantages of cyclic existence. And those are preliminary to generating bodhicitta and doing the other mind training practices. Then we also have the 6 preliminaries or preparatory practices before you do a Lamrim meditation session. So those are cleaning the room, setting up the altar and making offerings, doing the breathing meditation and setting our motivation, taking refuge and generating bodhicitta, the 7-limb prayer, and making requests to the gurus. Okay, oh good, you got it. I'm afraid to ask you next week. Then when we talk about the preliminaries to doing a 3-year tantric retreat, which are good practices to do even if you don't have the intention of doing a 3-year tantric retreat, because they're very good for purification and accumulation of merit, and so they help in your Lamrim meditation too. If we talk about 4 of those preliminaries, and the Tibetan term is nundro, they're prostration, Vajrasattva, mandala, and refuge. Okay, and sometimes some schools do prostration and refuge together, or refuge and bodhicitta together. Actually, when we do mandala offerings, we're doing the bodhicitta prayer as well during that. If you talk about 5 preliminaries, then you add the guru yoga. Okay. And then if you talk about 9, you add water bowls, satsa, vajra, damsik dorje, or vajra, samaya vajra, and dorje kadro. Okay, the burning offering. And so those make 9. Okay? So just to know that it's, we talk about these in different, the word preliminary, preparatory is used in different situations. Now, another thing to keep in mind is sometimes we hear preliminary and preparatory, and we say, that's what you do at the beginning in kindergarten. I want the good stuff. I want the high stuff. So let's forget this baby stuff and just give me the really, high practice, because, I'm a very qualified, sharp aptitude practitioner, we think. Okay. But all you have to do is start doing any of these preparatory practices, and you realize they're not that simple. They take a lot of concentration. You have to have faith and understanding. You have to have the right motivation and make them a Buddhist practice by having refuge in the 3 jewels. That there's actually a lot that has to be brought into doing the preparatory or preliminary practices. So don't think that they're easy things that you can skip over, but rather if you do them and you take the time and do them well, then it really pays off when you're doing the other practices. Okay? So for example, we come into the Dharma and we're full of negative karma, chock-a-block full. So whether, we intend to do tantric retreat or not, doing purification with prostrations and Vajrasattva is very, very helpful, And then also if we're going to have realizations, we need a lot of merit. So we need to do the 7-limb prayer and the mandala offerings. And we need to have stable faith, and so that we're sure of what our spiritual path is. So we need very strong refuge. Okay? So, all these things kind of fit together. I remember one of my teachers saying that, sometimes if we do Lamrim meditation, we're doing it and we know all the points, but it's kind of like reciting something. We're not getting much feeling from it. Yeah. So what's lacking in that time is purification and creation of merit. So if your mind is just feeling very dry and like a thing of concrete, then it's good to do more of the purification and creation of merit practices, because they kind of soften the mind. You know, remember, purification is like taking out the rocks and the junk from the field, and creating merit is like adding the fertilizer in the water, so softening, preparing the field of the mind. Okay, so that's why, you know, we often do these practices before a Lamrim meditation session, because they really soften the mind. Okay, so keep that in mind in case you find your practice becoming just kind of, you know, blah. Yeah. They often talk about, if your Lamrim practice is blah, there's this thing, Geshe Tekchok had a name for it, becoming immune to the Dharma. Okay, and what that means is the Tibetans have this great example, but you know, you have to really appreciate it in Tibetan culture context. When they had butter, you know, because they love butter in their tea. Okay, if you're transporting butter, they don't have it in nice little cubes or tubs or whatever. You transport it in a bag of leather. Okay, now if the leather that is holding the butter becomes tough, then you've really had it, because the butter is supposed to soften the leather. But if it makes it really tough, then it's like what to do, you know. It's like, you know, like being, that's this idea of your mind has, you have a lot of information, but not a lot of faith or inspiration. So your mind has become like that bag of leather with the butter inside. The butter's like all the Dharma teachings, but your mind is like the leather that's become hard. Yeah, you getting what I'm meaning? Yeah. So you want to prevent your mind from becoming like that. And so it's a nice balance of cultivating faith, confidence, and trust in the Dharma and in the three jewels, and cultivating wisdom. Okay, we need to balance those and cultivate both of them. Yeah, if we go too much to the, I don't want to say wisdom side here, but more the intelligence side, we might become a little bit intellectual, and then we become like that tough piece of leather. Yeah, if we go too much to the faith side, we might get a little bit too kind of ushy-gushy and blind faith. Yeah, like melted butter. So we need something in the middle where we have faith and confidence in the teaching, but also wisdom and knowledge, so that we can practice well. Okay, so it's always kind of, you know, making some sort of balance. And so you'll see this as you're doing the retreat. Yeah. Okay, so let's move on. We've talked about the first two of the preliminaries: precious human life, which means identifying it, knowing its purpose and meaning, and third, knowing its rarity and difficulty to attain. And then we've also completed the second preliminary about death. Okay, and death here death is gross impermanence. Okay, so we're not even talking here about the subtle impermanence of things arising and ceasing in every moment, but just the gross impermanence of death is already shocking enough to us, and we're totally tuned out and walled off to it, aren't we? Yeah, I mean, I kept remembering your comment, how you did what I had suggested, making a list of all the people you knew who had died, and then you said all these people, there were how many? I don't know. 64 or some number, and in spite of every single one of them who have died, you still feel you're not going to die. And it's like that's the way all of us are. Yeah? So this is gross impermanence. Okay, so the mind is really fogged over by ignorance, and the one of recognizing the gross impermanence of death is very, very helpful to our practice. In fact, they say that if we don't remember death in the morning, we waste the morning. If we don't remember it in the afternoon, we waste the afternoon. And if we don't remember it in the evening, we waste the evening. Because the thing about death is, it's like right in our face, the question of, am I prepared to die? Am I prepared to navigate death, bardo, and take a good rebirth? Do I know how to do that? Yeah? I mean, that's the question that the meditation on death is asking us. And so we check, do I know what to do at the time of death? Am I able to control my mind when unexpected things happen, or even expected things happen? How do I usually react? Okay? And do I know what to do at the time of death? Do I know what to do after I've died? Yeah? Do I know what to do when I'm reborn? Besides scream at the top of my lungs if I'm born as a human being. Yeah? One of the reasons we wake up in the morning and we generate our motivation is because someday we'll wake up in a next life, and maybe there will be the habit of generating a good motivation. Okay? So meditating on death is very, very important to wake us up to the importance of doing Dharma practice. Yeah? Otherwise, Dharma just becomes kind of, a nice hobby, something you do on Thursday night. Yeah, listen to the internet on Thursday night on Dharma. But Friday night you go to the movies, and Saturday night you're out drinking and drugging and overeating, and Sunday night you're, playing checkers or chess if you're sophisticated. Okay, and Monday night, then there's something else, okay? So we meditate on death. And then the next one is meditating on karma and its consequences, okay? And so here our author says, after death we do not cease to exist, but we have to take rebirth. Our place of rebirth will either be happy or miserable according to our actions rather than our free will. Therefore, it is reasonable to try to cultivate good actions properly and avoid bad ones. This contemplation has 4 parts. Okay? So the 4 parts are 1, the certainty of actions and their results. 2, the multiplying nature of actions or karma. 3, not having to face the consequences of actions you haven't done. And 4, once committed, actions do not fade away. Okay, so I hope you've heard these before in Lam Rim teachings. Whether you've remembered them or not, I'm not sure, but it's good to remember them, okay? Because this is the basic foundation for understanding karma. When I studied in Italy with Geshe Topten, he loved talking about these 4, and he loved talking about karma. And so we were a residential community, and he would talk about karma. But if we had one visitor that afternoon, no matter what the topic he had gone on to after karma was, because somebody new came, he would talk about karma again. Yeah. And then we'd get beyond karma, the nenext few sessions, and then somebody else new would come. And again, he would talk about karma. And I remember thinking one time, Geshe-la, we've heard this so many times. Yeah. But after some time, I've become really grateful to him for having repeated the teachings on karma again and again and again, because I saw that they really made an imprint in my mind. Yeah? In the same way, like Lama Zopa in my first meditation course, yeah, he ate worldly concerns again and again and again and again and again and again. And I meet other people nowadays who have never even heard of the 8 worldly concerns. But I had them drilled into my head from the beginning, you know, and I'm very grateful to that, because they're really the line of differentiation between Dharma practice and worldly practice. But a lot of people, like, don't even know them, you know, they kind of got jumped over. And then Rinpoche also, when the way the Kopan courses were structured then, is they were a month long, and the last 2 weeks we took precepts every day. So we would get up early in the cold, in the dark, and go sit in this tent. You know, it was us and the fleas and Rinpoche. And you know how you kneel down in that very uncomfortable position. So we would kneel down like that, and then Rinpoche would give the motivation. Or sometimes he'd give the motivation before, and then we'd kneel down, and then he'd think of something else he wanted to add to the motivation. But the motivation, it was always 5 o'clock in the morning. It was the disadvantages of cyclic existence. Yeah, the 3 kinds of suffering, the 6 kinds of suffering, the 8 kinds of suffering. How rotten cyclic existence was. At 5 o'clock in the morning, when you're half asleep, day after day after day, trying to balance yourself so you don't fall over because this position is so uncomfortable. And you know, a couple of years ago I went and thanked Rinpoche for that. Because I really see, because I heard so much about the disadvantages of cyclic existence again and again. It made a very strong imprint in my mind. You know, it wasn't something that you just kind of fluff over, but you know, we're talking business here. So there's lots of these things, and I think, you know, this teaching on karma is similar. Yeah, that if you have it firm in your mind, it really influences your worldview. Whereas if it's not firm in your mind, then when it comes to action, we act as if we don't believe in karma. Remember, I say a lot that we talk a lot about karma, but when it comes to action, whether we believe in karma or not is up for grabs. Okay, well, that's because we haven't really put it into our worldview. So these 4 points are very important. Okay, so the first point, the certainty of actions and their results. All instances of happiness or suffering, whether coarse or subtle, are the results of specific wholesome and unwholesome action. The Precious Garland says, and who wrote the Precious Garland? Nagarjuna. Good. Okay, so the Precious Garland says, all sufferings are the result of unwholesome actions. So likewise are all bad rebirths. The pleasure enjoyed throughout our lives and all happy rebirths are the result of virtue. So the idea here is that things are not called positive or negative karma, destructive or constructive karma, because they're inherently good or bad, but because of the results that they bring. So the Buddha looked at when sentient beings had results that were called happiness, the causes of those were called constructive actions. Okay? When he saw that sentient beings were miserable, then the causes of those, the karmic causes of those, were called destructive actions. Okay? So things are called constructive or destructive not because of some commandment of the Buddha or some laws the Buddha made up, but just because of the way dependent arising works in our own mind, the way causes produce effects in our own mind. And the Buddha described these and so therefore gave the label constructive or destructive actions. Okay? So when we experience happiness, it's always a result of constructive actions. It's never a result of destructive ones. Okay? Whenever we experience misery, it's always the result of destructive actions, never the result of constructive ones. Okay? So that's important to remember when we're on the verge of doing a negative action. You know, when we say, well, this won't hurt. Well, you know, if the results of destructive actions are always suffering, never happiness, then what do we mean it won't hurt? Okay? Then the second one is that karma multiplies. Okay, so we do an action, it leaves seeds in our mind stream. These seeds intensify in strength. Okay, so a small or wholesome, let's start over. A small, wholesome or unwholesome, meaning virtuous or non-virtuous. Just different translation. A small, wholesome or unwholesome cause can give rise to a much greater happiness or miserable result. Special Verses collected by topic says, performing even the smallest misdeed will lead to great fear and trouble in future lives, like poison that has entered the body. Creating even a small meritorious act will bring forth great joy in future lives and fulfill the great purpose, like grain ripening into a bumper crop. Okay? So the idea is that, you know, small things can bring big results. In the same way in nature, you have a small thing and it brings a big result. Yeah? And this is why I'm very picky about getting every knapweed plant. Because if you leave one knapweed plant, yeah, after a few years, you have a whole field of knapweed. Yeah, whereas if you take that little extra effort and pull out that one remaining plant, you cut it. Okay? So in the same way, you know, negative actions, they kind of ferment in our mind and increase in strength. And positive, even small meritorious or virtuous actions, likewise. Yeah, they, what's the word? Gestate. Yeah, gestate in our mind. And they can produce many, you know, big results. Okay? So the idea is that we shouldn't be lazy about creating small virtuous actions, because if we remember that they can bring big results, then, you know, we have more energy to do them. And similarly, we shouldn't poo-poo you know, small non-virtuous actions, thinking they won't bring any result, because they too multiply. Yeah? So this is good to remember, you know, like when you get up in the morning and you feel like, oh, I don't feel like setting up my altar this morning. You know, I'd rather sleep in an extra 10 minutes. I'll be fresher during meditation if I do. You know how we... So I just won't set up the water bowls this morning. But, you know, it's a small virtuous action, and if we do it, it will bring, you know, it can bring a big result. Especially if we do it thinking about bodhicitta and dedicating it for the benefit of sentient beings and meditating on emptiness while we do it. Okay, similarly, when, you know, there's a situation and we think, well, it's just a little white lie, or it's just a little bit of malicious talk, you know, just a little bit, nobody else will know about it. But, you know, that too increases in our mind and can bring big results. Okay? Okay, so the same text further says, just as the shadow of the bird accompanies it in the sky, so beings follow after wholesome and unwholesome actions. Actually, usually it says, the wholesome and unwholesome actions follow after the beings. You know, like in the Foundation of All Good Qualities. So I'm not sure how the translation is in this one. Okay, but it does make sense in the sense that we follow our karma. In other words, if we have a lot of positive karma, we'll follow that, or negative karma, that will, you know, determine our next rebirth. So in that way of phrasing it makes sense. Just as a traveler with few provisions will suffer on the road, so sentient beings who do not do good will come to a bad end. So you die, and your knapsack has no good karma. Okay. When we go traveling, yeah, we pack well, don't we? Yeah. When we travel, we have a big suitcase. We have our vitamins, our protein powder, our soap that's special for our skin, the hand cream that we like, you know, our shampoo, which is again a special variety, just the exact socks that we like, the kind of clothes that are appropriate for the situation. You know, our favorite toothbrush, and the kind of toothpaste that, you know, good Buddhists always use, because you don't want to be caught using the kind of toothpaste that regular old people use. That's just not in. Okay. Have you ever noticed that? Yeah, there's a big status thing about what kind of toothpaste you are. It creates part of your image. Okay. So we take great care when we pack. Yeah, we pack lots of things with us for every situation. Peter, you're listening in. Can I tell the story about you going to Mexico? He's not on? Oh, then I'll definitely tell the story. Why isn't he on watching this? Okay. So we're Peter's going to Mexico for a few months, and he's a journalist, and so he doesn't have any leads or any jobs or anything. But just in case he got sent, you know, somewhere across the world, he took clothes for every season. Okay, he had 6 enormous suitcases, and I mean enormous, because Kathleen saw them and she'll say I'm not exaggerating. You remember? I mean enormous suitcases with summer clothes and winter clothes and spring clothes and fall clothes and all the computer gadgets you can ever imagine, and all sorts of other things, you know, that you know you might need in case of an emergency. And I think, did somebody else have to take some of his suitcases? Yeah, she carried 2 of them to Mexico. Okay, anyway, he got all 6 of them there. And then we were driving from Mexico City to Jalapa in this van, and Peter had so much luggage he had to put a suitcase on his lap. And it wasn't a short ride. But the point is that when we go traveling in a physical way, we are willing to endure the suffering of a huge suitcase on our lap for a 6-hour or 5-hour trip, okay? Because we see the benefits of covering all the possible things that could possibly happen on your 3-month trip, yeah? When you're basically staying in a tropical climate. Okay, but we go to great lengths. But when we think of the trip from this life to next life, do we make any preparation? You know, do we think I've got to start packing away some good karma now? And I've got to empty my suitcase of all the negative karma? Do we ever think like that? No. Okay, but that's what this verse is talking about, okay, that we should really start thinking about, you know, what we're taking with us in our future lives. And the only thing is our karma and, you know, the habitual mental states that we've cultivated. So we better take care of that, you know. And if we spend hours going out shopping for, you know, every small thing we could possibly need, then surely we should exert some effort to create even small constructive actions. Just as the traveler with plentiful provisions will have an enjoyable journey, so sentient beings who have done good will go to a happy rebirth. Okay, so those are the ones who have packed away a lot of good karma. Okay, packed away meaning don't take it literally, it's figuratively. Okay, and we should not do even the smallest wrong, thinking it will do no harm, for the accumulation of drops of water will gradually fill a large vessel. Okay, so we all know that, especially when you're trying to sleep, drip, 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 and you come in the morning and the bucket's full. Yeah, so even small actions, yeah, create something. And don't think the little wrongs I've done will make no difference later. For just as single water drops gradually fill a large vessel, so ordinary beings become filled with wrongs collected little by little. Okay, so we accumulate this little white lie, taking this pencil that doesn't belong to me, saying just this one small ridicule sentence, you know, just deliberately getting rid of one bug, you know, kind of little by little we create it. Don't think the little virtues I've done will make no difference later, for just as single drops of water gradually fill a large vessel, so the steadfast are filled with virtue collected little by little. Okay? So similarly, you know, I mean, why when we live here in the Abbey we offer our food before every meal? Why? You know? It's a small thing, doesn't take very long, you can skip it. Why do we do it? Yeah, because it's a practice of making offerings to the three jewels. And so we eat a lot, so we accumulate the virtue from, you know, having made offerings little by little, daily, as we offer our meals. Okay? So if you think of these things, you know, you go in the meditation hall every time, you make 3 prostrations. Okay? Now you can either make spaced out prostrations or you can make focused prostrations. Yeah? And it's just a small action, but if you make focused ones, you know, we're accumulating merit little by little by little, and it, you know, can really bring a big result. Similar to just before we go to bed, you know, generating our motivation for sleeping. Or when we get dressed in the morning, thinking that we're offering fine raiments to the Buddha. You know, small actions, but they create positive karma. Okay. Then the third point is not having to face the consequences of actions you have not done, and we don't experience the results of actions that we haven't done. Okay, if you have not accumulated an action, whether it would give rise to pleasure or pain, you will not experience its consequences. Those who enjoy the fruits of infinite merits accumulated by the Guru, meaning the Buddha, by the teacher, okay, do not have to collect all their causes, but they must do at least must do their part. Okay, so let's take the first sentence. Okay, we don't we won't experience the results of causes that we haven't created. Okay, so that's why it's very important to be meticulous about the karma we create. Yeah, because if we don't create the causes for happiness, we won't experience happiness. So no matter how much we pray to the Buddha, yeah, please may I have this, please may this, please that. If we don't create the causes, then we won't receive the results. Okay, so when we do the Lam prayers, sometimes we say, you know, Buddha, please bless me to generate bodhicitta, or please bless me to cherish others more than myself. So that's good to say that. It does put some imprint on the mind. But if we don't do the meditations that talk about the disadvantages of self-centeredness and the benefits of cherishing others and exchanging self and others, if we don't do those meditations, then no matter how much we pray to the Buddha, may we be able to cherish others more than ourselves, our mind's not going to change, because we haven't created the principal cause by doing those meditations that actually change the mind. Okay? Similarly, if we haven't created the causes of certain sufferings, we're not going to receive the results of those sufferings. And you see this sometimes in very peculiar ways. Like, it doesn't happen so much in the States, but in like India, if all the same types of business are on one street. Okay, so if you want auto repairs, all the auto repair shops are on one street. Okay, in our place they're dotted around the city, but there they tend to maybe accumulate. But you'll see one shop will do really good business and somebody else won't. But they're on the same street selling the same stuff, you know. And there might be small differences in the service you receive, but basically it's the same. Why do people go to one store and not the other? Okay, well, this would have to do with the karma that the people in both of those stores had created before. So one had created the cause to receive business and thus wealth. The other had not created that cause to receive others' business and therefore wealth that comes from doing business. Okay? So you experience the result of what you've created, but not the result of what you haven't created. Okay, so it's in mundane affairs, it's in spiritual matters too, so really thinking about what the causes are for certain things and then creating the results. I remember one time when I lived in France at the monastery, the one that was the horse stables, remember? And it was freezing cold, and I had almost no money, and we had to pay for our own heat individually, you know, and we had to pay to stay at the monastery. And so I was cold and and my mind's complaining, and then I remember in one meditation session, I just said, this is a result of your own miserliness, children, so stop complaining. And if you don't like this result, then you've got to be more generous. Yeah? So I had a little talk with myself in my meditation session. And then I started pushing myself to really start being more generous, because I was seeing, living there, you know, the effects of my stinginess very clearly. And it was amazing, because as I started trying to be more generous, you know, kind of, it didn't happen instantly, but over time the situation improved. Yeah. So I was very curious about that. But, you know, so it's just things to think about, you know, and if we understand what things bring what kind of results, yeah, then to really make sure that we create the causes for those kind of results. And don't create the causes for the opposites. Yeah? Yeah, so it was the same thing, you know, when I got hepatitis, or when I recently got shingles. It's like, well, this is the result of your karma. So don't complain. If you don't create the cause, you don't get the result. You've got shingles, kiddo. You created the cause. So, yeah. And so that's actually at the point where you can start to alter things. Because you can get shingles, or you can get hep, or you can get whatever you get, and then sit there and moan and groan and moan and groan and create a whole ton of negative karma that will only create more cause for sickness and discomfort. Or you can say, this is the result of my own karma. I'm experiencing the result of what I myself have created. And if I don't like this result, then I've got to stop creating the cause. And so I'm going to learn from this experience and not bellyache about it, because it's a really good lesson for me, you know, to look at my mind and how I'm acting. And then you start acting different, and you start training your mind in a different way. And that is taking advantage of the situation. You know, that's one of the thought training practices, to transform adversity into the path. Okay? Then the fourth point is, once committed, actions do not fade away. Yeah. So I always like to use the computer for this example. You know, you save a file and then it vanishes. Have you ever had that happen? Yeah. Oh, you know, you work on it so hard, you forgot to, you know, save it as you were going along. Something actually had happened to me today. The computer, I don't know why, decided to reboot itself, even though I didn't ask it to. And so what I was working on, you know how that happens? Yeah. So I lost part of what I was working on, thank goodness, not too much. But, you know, computers, you can lose your stuff like that, okay? With karma, it's not that easy. Yeah, it doesn't vanish like our computer files. It doesn't vanish like our car keys. Yeah. Yeah. So the especially exalted praise says, the Brahmins say that virtues and misdeeds can be given away and transferred, but you teach that actions done do not fade away, and actions not done have no consequences. Okay, so this is an important thing, you know, that we cannot transfer our karma to somebody else. Now, sometimes in some Buddhist traditions, you'll hear them use the term, you know, now at the end we're going to transfer our merits, okay? Actually, it's dedicate our merits, okay? I don't know how it got translated into English as transfer our merits, because we can't, you know, our karma isn't like money in a bank account that you can wire over to somebody else's account. Yeah? So we dedicate the merit for all sentient beings. We can dedicate for somebody's welfare. Okay? But we can't transfer our good karma to them. You know? Otherwise, I mean, wouldn't we have all transferred our negative karma to somebody else by now? Yeah? And the Buddha, if the Buddha could have, you know, taken all that, you know, if the Buddha was the master banker, he would have transferred all the negative karma into his account, so, because he doesn't want us to suffer. But it doesn't work that way. Okay. The King of Meditative Stabilization Sutra also says, it is impossible not to encounter the results of your deeds, but you won't feel the results of those done by others. Okay. Oh, but there was one sentence I skipped up here. Okay, it said, those who enjoy the fruits of the infinite merits accumulated by the Buddha do not have to collect all of their causes, but they must at least do their part. What that means is, you know, we receive some of the benefit of the merits that the Buddha accumulated, don't we? Because the Buddha accumulated so much infinite merit, and that's why he became a Buddha, and that's what gave him the ability to be of great benefit to us. So the fact that we're able to benefit from the Buddha's teachings and so on is because he accumulated that merit that enabled him to become a Buddha. So it's saying that to receive the benefit of hearing the Buddha's teachings, we don't have to create the same merit that the Buddha did. But we must have done our part to be able to hear the teachings. In other words, we must have created the karma to be able to hear the teachings, because that doesn't happen without cause. Okay? And so that's why in the seven limb prayer, there's the prayer of, one of the lines of requesting the Buddha to turn the Dharma wheel. Okay, it helps to create the cause to receive teachings. And coming to teachings creates the cause to come to more teachings. Okay? Okay, the transmission of discipline says, even after hundreds of eons, actions are not exhausted. If they meet with their assembled conditions, then embodied beings will meet with their results. Okay, so we may have done an action gazillions of eons ago, but it just doesn't get lost. But as soon as we meet with the cooperative conditions in this lifetime, even that seed that was created so long ago can ripen and we experience the results. Okay? So remembering the certainty and multiplying nature of karma, that an action not done will yield no results, and that once done, an action will not fade away. What kind of sentence is this? Doesn't make any sense. So remembering the certainty and multiplying nature of karma, that an action that no action will obstruct all things. Okay, so what it means is remembering all those 4 points will obstruct all that gives rise to the path of destructive actions. Okay? So in other words, it'll stop us from doing destructive actions. You must earnestly engage in virtuous, wholesome actions, and since training in the precious awakening mind is considered to be the principal and supreme virtue, all of them should be part of that training. Okay? So what it's saying there is that the principal virtue is bodhicitta, and so we should do all of our practices motivated by bodhicitta, because it will enable us to increase our virtue, which will bring other good results along with it. Okay. So we have a few minutes for questions. Yeah?
So when we get to the point in our practice that we aspire to gain realization, which has just entered my mind this year, all the basis of the Lam Rim, doing prostrations, are specific enough of the causes for realizations? Or like if I were to say about the realizations of generating bodhicitta more than just an intellectual understanding, that's the one I've been focusing on lately.
Okay.
Are there specific causes, or the foundation that I've been building for these past few years sufficient enough to just keep going along?
Okay. Okay, so you're saying if you have the wish to generate bodhicitta, is the practice of doing prostrations and meditating on Lam Rim, is that sufficient of a cause to generate bodhicitta? Yes and no. Yeah, because if we do all these things really with great attention and concentration, then it's very good, okay? But you want not just prostrations, you want the other purification practices too. You want a lot of accumulation of merit, okay? And then a lot of listening to teachings and meditating on the teachings. And since cultivating renunciation is a big help to cultivating bodhicitta, you want to create the cause by meditating on the causes of renunciation and the determination to be free. Okay, and then you want to do the specific meditations that are the cause of bodhicitta, you know, so either the 7-point cause and effect instruction or equalizing, exchanging self and others. Okay, you want to do some emptiness meditation in there because that helps generate bodhicitta. And then you want to make requests to the Guru Buddha to inspire the mind. Yeah, because that helps us really put our intention out there in a very strong way.